Though things are different now, there was a time where, if you were a game developer, you had to have your own mascot. Nintendo had Mario, Capcom had Mega Man, Sega had Sonic, and Namco had Pac-Man. To me, Pac-Man never really had the appeal all those other characters did. A yellow orb with red boots never really held my attention the same way Nintendo's Plumber Superstar did. That all changed in 1998 when Namco released Klonoa, the door to Phantomile for the original PlayStation. The game involved its namesake character Klonoa as he traveled across the land using his magic wind bullet to grab and throw enemies. For one reason or another, the game was not a commercial success. Finding a copy of the original PlayStation Klonoa today can cost upwards of $60 to $100. Regardless, that did not stop Namco from putting out numerous other Klonoa games on the PlayStation 2, WonderSwan, Game Boy Advance, and most recently the Nintendo Wii. With so many Klonoa games on so many platforms, it can be tricky to decide which ones are worth playing and which ones are worth forgetting. Though most of the Klonoa franchise is worth checking out, the two most important entries are Door to Phantomile on the original PlayStation and Lunatia's Veil on the PlayStation 2. The story in Door to Phantomile follows Klonoa and his wind spirit Hupo as they investigate a strange craft that has crash-landed on Bell Hill, and how that relates to Klonoa's prophetic nightmares of the same event. The pair eventually learn that the evil Gaudius wants to unleash nightmares upon the world of Phantomile as revenge for 300 years of imprisonment. It's not the most complicated plot in the world, but that ends up working as a benefit for the game. Cutscenes are short, get their point across, and put you right back into the game. But don't let the lack of complexity or the game's cutesy style fool you. Door to Phantomile is not afraid to occasionally tug on your heartstrings. This, unfortunately, does not carry on to Lunatia's Veil, which teams Klonoa up with newcomers Lolo and Popka in their quest to ring 4 bells across the world in order to rid the world of a nameless, faceless evil that plagues it. Along the way, they encounter a sky pirate named Leorina who makes a copy of Klonoa's wind bullet to suit her own needs. It simply feels predictable compared to Door to Phantomile, and it doesn't help that many of the characters lean heavily on stereotypes found in Japanese anime. Both Phantomile and Lunatia play nearly identically. The primary game mechanics two games share involves grabbing enemies with your wind bullet and throwing them at objects in the environment, or alternatively, using them to propel you upwards for a double jump. In general, Door to Phantomile seems to favor giving the player multiple routes through levels, while Lunatia's Veil focuses more on providing the player with enemies that do unique things when they've been grabbed with the wind bullet. Neither game is fairly difficult, though Lunatia's Veil deserves praise for having one of the smoothest difficulty curves in any game I've ever played. When you begin, the game starts out almost too easy. Extra lives are plentiful, and the opportunities to die are almost non-existent. However, as the game progresses, the difficulty very slowly ramps up, until by the final level, you'll find yourself dropping nearly 10 lives to make a single jump. Though this can make early parts of the game feel boring, it really helps the notion that you're building up to an epic finale. This is only aided by the fact that Lunatia's Veil has more levels than Door to Phantomile. I cannot count the number of times I thought I was at the final level, only to have the game keep going. In comparison, Phantomile maintains a more even difficulty throughout, and can be completed in around 4 to 5 hours, versus Lunatia taking around 7 hours. Unfortunately, Klonoa 2 simply feels like a poor attempt to make the franchise less cute and more mature. While Klonoa's new streamlined design for Lunatia's Veil is definitely an improvement, the overall tone the game shares almost feels like they're trying to make an attempt to retool the franchise to make it appeal a bit more to the mass market. Which is a shame because in the process it loses some of what made Door to Phantomile so charming. This trend continues with Klonoa on the Wii, which updates all of the content from Door to Phantomile with brand new graphics, another new design for Klonoa, and more. Though characters in previous Klonoa games spoke an imaginary language with English subtitles, Klonoa on the Wii marks the first time a Klonoa game features real spoken dialogue in the English language.
Yes, indeed. This is the songstress Nafis. Well done, Joker.
Although for purists, the option to go back to the imaginary language does exist. Regardless, it is clear that Namco is committed to do anything it can to make Klonoa succeed, even if that means completely overhauling the main character for a Western audience. Though Klonoa 2 may make some missteps here and there, the character and formula work well enough to equal a great game. It's just not as great as Door to Phantomile, a game I hold in the same regard as classics like Knights and Yoshi's Island. But don't let that stop you from picking up Klonoa 2, because in my opinion, both games are very much worth owning.